Hello and welcome to Witchy Wellness Radio. I'm your host, Lauren Chalantani, women's holistic health coach and fellow recovering perfectionist. This podcast was created to show you that your body is not in the way, it is actually leading your way. Hello, beautiful. Welcome back to Witchy Wellness Radio, and you are listening to episode 56, Beyond Belief with Jerico Mandybur. Our beautiful guest today, Jerico, is an award-winning author, coach, and consultant, and a pro tarot reader, a DIY witch, and an accomplished writer and editor. But above all, she is a spiritual guide, and her mission is to help people like us uncover our magic and activate radical wholeness within ourselves. She believes that together we can forge a path of self-worth and revolutionary thought through creative healing. She believes in breaking the rules, taking up space, and raising hell. Jerico believes that we were born with dignity, love, full expression, and innate power. And get ready, because it's time to take our power back. A little bit more of what we talk about today on the show is Jerico and I talk about her own career path from a high-paced journalism career to now a spiritual advisor. Simple spiritual practices like connecting to your inner child. Her podcast, Beyond Belief. Her process for leading clients through their own creative healing. Power. And why it's a good thing. All about tarot, free writing exercises, meditation practices, and so much more. Please enjoy episode 56, Beyond Belief with Jerico Mandybur. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Witchy Wellness Radio. I am your host, Lauren Chalantani, and this is a show where you get to learn that your body is not actually in your way, but she is leading your way. And today I'm so excited for our guest, Jerico Mandybur. She is a beautiful fellow podcaster on Beyond Belief, and she's all things beautifully woo. She's a spiritual coach, a tarot reader, a reiki healer, a meditator, legally ordained minister, lifelong writer, and she's worked over a decade in media as a successful journalist, and now she's taking the leap into spiritual leadership. Welcome to the show, Jerico. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Hi, I'm so excited to talk to you as well and see you on Zoom.
Yes. And, experience that we're having technical difficulties, that everybody is on Zoom. It's quite the popular place right now to hang out, but
it's all happening on Zoom.
Yes, everything is happening. But I have a similar story of I've been in marketing for 10 years and feeling the call to be more spiritual. For me, it's integrating mind, body, spirit, but I would love to hear your story of how you felt called to really listen inward and take that leap and help hold space for other people to do the same.
Yes. So, okay. When I was really little, and, a kid up until my teenage years, I was very spiritual. I always have been. That's been consistent. I was very witchy. I was interested in magic and supernatural stuff, and I was just one of those spooky children. But in your teenage years, you tend to tone that down. You want to fit in, which I definitely did. And then at the end of school, when I kind of realized that I could go to university and be emotionally validated through my career, then I really leaned heavily into my professional side. I was a journalist and a writer, and I was an editor, and all the way up till editorial director. And when you do that, you have a tendency to, cut off parts of yourself. So I didn't want to be, a serious objective journalist and then say, oh, by the way, I also believe in chakras, in astrology, and everything else. So that was very much pushed down. And the result of that was, I had depression and mental health issues. I was incredibly exhausted and burnt out from trying to, keep up with the rat race of it all, to the point where, I just hit a breaking point, and I realized that I needed to go back and really embrace the things that made me happy as a kid, that made my inner child happy and that still make me happy, and to just really own them. And by that point, because I was so desperate, I didn't really care anymore about talking about it publicly. So I really just became my real self, because I felt that I had nothing to lose, and it kind of became a part of my work. I started writing about it and talking about it, and one thing kind of led to another, and they kind of merged up until the point where I didn't really need to be a certain kind of serious writer anymore. I could just, be me, and let the people that wanted to work with me find me. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am today.
Beautiful. I love what you said, going back to your roots as a child, because that's working, with inner child stuff, but also just for me, if I need some more joy or pleasure getting out of my head, I think about things I used to like to do, witchy and non-witchy as a kid. And I love dancing and being in my body and just, like prancing around my apartment, like just with no care in the world. And it's so simple and so easy, because some people think that some of these practices or meditation, you have to learn a lot and study and practice, but it's just really connecting to like that innate part that's in all of us.
Yes, that is such a good point. I think that little version of us, those things that we're attracted to and that we love, that does not change. It's innate, and we're born with it for whatever reason, and we crave those things. And like spirituality and holistic health and all of these things, we can be tempted to think that they require formality and even seriousness, and that's just not the case. Like the easiest way to make yourself happy is to just like let yourself be and play in the way that you always have. It's really instinctual, which is good, and it doesn't cost anything.
No, having a good time. And like I always think of prioritizing pleasure is what I think about. And we can't, if we're in a funk or you can't solve a problem or you can't having trouble tapping in your intuition, I always find like getting myself into like a higher vibration or just feeling happy, like as simple as that, it really helps, helps you see the bigger truth or the bigger perspective.
Yeah, it's so true.
Well, I'm sure you speak of all of that on your new show. I would love to hear more about your podcast, which is awesome. I know this podcast will air further into your season. You already have a few released. It's called Beyond Belief. I'll link everything in the show notes. Every Witchy Wellness listener will also love the show, I'm sure.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, like I think so. I had a previous podcast called Self-Service, and it was really about self-care and spirituality, and it was a container that I was kind of holding space for people inside. So it was very comforting and soft. It was almost like ASMR or something. And this one, I kind of wanted to take a slightly different tact, where I spoke to people that may not have comforting things to say. They may just have things that we as people find really strange or haven't heard of before, or conversations with those people and learn why they believe what they believe, what they're all about, and how we can basically like have a conversation and learn something from people from entirely different walks of life to us, and meet somewhere in the middle, and show each other respect and dignity and curiosity when it comes to spirituality, in a way that feels really lighthearted and non-dogmatic, and do it in a way that whether you're a skeptic or whether you're a highly spiritual person, you can still listen to Beyond Belief and get something out of it. So that's the goal. It's about spirituality, but it's for everyone.
Beautiful. Yeah, I like taking gleaming nuggets from different practices or different perspectives, because we all, we all have our own perspective and different things work for us. And I love learning. We're all really saying the same thing with spirituality or mindfulness. And even if it seems like way out of left field, we're all saying kind of the same principles in our own way. And different people hear different things. You hear what you want to hear, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just different languages and different, buzzwords or terms, but the truth is always the same underneath, just like with, mainstream world religions. It really is. We have so much more in common than we do not in common. And I think that, when we get back to those foundational things that we value, human beings are not unique at all. We're all very similar, and that's a great thing.
Oh, yeah. And I think, at least right now, I find during quarantine, hopefully people are realizing that. And for me, it's actually been a beautiful opportunity to tune inward and connect more to myself, and just, realizing what I can control, what I can't control, and learning to hold a space for myself, but see people how they are and still love them, even if they're stuck in fear, even if XYZ. And, even though I'm stuck in my apartment, I'm, making the best of it. And it's like, I'm thinking of it as my beautiful cocoon. How are we going to emerge into this world as? And shows like this, Beyond Belief, filling your mind and your spirit with things that are going to help you grow and hold that space for you to expand your perspective, is a beautiful opportunity right now.
Yeah, it really is an opportunity. There are, a lot of things to be sad or angry about, or, the whole gamut of emotions. People are really going through it right now, and it's like an incredibly heavy time. But like anything, there are a lot of valuable lessons and a lot of work to be done. And I totally agree. I think that the opportunity is really, really great. We actually have a chance to step back and think of how we want to live and what world we want to live in. And that's like, that does not happen every day.
No, not at all. And I would love to hear kind of the work that you do when you help people, someone who, wants to come to you as a spiritual leader. I know you do a lot of things. So, which is beautiful, because I don't think one thing fixes all. If someone wants to come work with you, what kind of things are they working on? Maybe generally, how can you help? And maybe give examples of some of the practices that you can help them with.
Yeah. So the kind of umbrella idea is creative healing. And I say creative healing because I think that human beings are inherently creative, and it doesn't mean like we're good at visual arts. It just means that we have an imagination that is our greatest gift, and that is like a huge and play and heal ourselves in a way that doesn't require any structures, rules, programs, qualifications, anything like that. So I kind of have a DIY approach to life. And so when I'm working with people, I really just try and get them to tap into what they would feel good doing, and to do that, rather than telling them like, oh, you should definitely do craniosacral, work, or you should definitely do yoga, or, whatever it is. So that's why I call it creative healing. And the people that I talk to, they all have a few things in common. One is that they're creative and they're interested in, my approach. Like they kind of have to resonate with me in one way or another. And I think a lot of them resonate with that kind of DIY rebelliousness. And then the other thing is that they might be questioning that, so there's issues of self-worth and worthiness and, dignity and innate worthiness and sovereignty in general. And then also just their inner truth, you know, like not what's in a book, but like what does it look like for them to feel powerful. And power is a big theme in my work, because I truly believe that all of us are born with limitless power. People have this really negative association with the word power, because they think it means being very assertive and masculine, and especially dominating, having like a power over somebody. And I think that that's, you know, historically the way that power has been portrayed in our society, but there's very specific reasons for that, you know, because of who has been in power. But power, you know, it comes from the ground up. It's completely grassroots in essence, and it just means a sense of worthiness, of trust, of knowing our value, and equally the value of everyone around us, and how interconnected we really are. And that no matter what happens, you know, we can be unshakable and essentially creative and essentially limitless in what we're able to do. So I really like talking about power, and I think it's important to change the narrative around it and what it really means. So that's kind of the overarching stuff that I'm interested in. But when it comes to, you know, what I actually do or how I work with people, there is tarot. That's a big part of my work, but also energy healing and, you know, specifically Reiki, and then a little bit of astrology. Like, I don't say I'm an astrologer because I'm still very much a student, and I'll probably be an eternal student of astrology. And somatic work, mindfulness. There are a lot of concepts that I'll try and bring in, and just a lot of talking, you know, like classic conversations where I can ask the right powerful type of questions and get people to think about how they can take action in a different way, and how they can be creative healers and self-healers, so that they can, you know, really have their life look like the way that they want to. And I try not to focus too much on like specific outcomes in that sense, but the feeling of aliveness, the feeling of magic, and what it is to, you know, own your magic, uncover it, value it, own it, and then like share it with other people. Like, that's all I care about. I just want people to feel that way and not stop.
Yeah, it's all about loving the journey and realizing that we can create our reality, but also like we are the masters of our own emotions. And for me, it's like that power that you were talking about is so key, is no matter what's going on externally in the world, or, you know, your own programs that are coming up, or your shadow side, like learning how to stand strong in who you are, and, you know, bringing in tools to process or energy healing or whatever you need to do. But like the sense of knowingness that everything has and always will work out. And, you know, I think of like Marie Forleo's quote, everything is figure outable. And just knowing that, and just really knowing and feeling that every cell, because knowing one thing and actually feeling it are two different things in my experience.
Yes, so true, so true. And yeah, that also kind of reminds me of Tai Chi. My dad is a martial artist, and so I grew up doing Tai Chi. And, you know, people see that and they think, oh, it's so slow and it doesn't seem necessarily like a martial art or like it's powerful. But the center of gravity that the Tai Chi practitioners hold, and the way that their legs are bent, they're apart, their feet are so rooted in the earth, nothing is going to like knock them off that center. And that is like a really nice analogy for power as well for me.
So beautiful. It doesn't have to be this forceful, you know, the bad connotations that people have right now. It's just the balance of both the feminine and masculine, both rooted and grounded and healed. I think that's super key right now.
Yeah.
I would love to learn more about your tarot reading, because we haven't really talked about tarot reading on the show before, which I'm so surprised about. So if you just want to give us like your own, you know, Tarot 101 and your own perspective on it, I would love to hear all about it.
Okay, so tarot, is very diverse in people's interpretations of it, and reasons for using it. It's obviously traditionally a divination tool, so fortune telling, and I think that that's really valid. I have nothing against it, and I can definitely see how it does work in that way. But for me, like the approach that I like to use, and I think that brings out the best in tarot, is just using it as, like a healing tool, a coaching tool, a tool for introspection. It's kind of like, I mean, I guess it's like therapy in a way, in the sense that you do a tarot reading and you create this container, like figuratively, but also literally, for a person to just really sit in their feelings and to process in a way that they might not normally. And it's almost like, if you think of an ink blot test in like traditional, psychoanalysis, it's like, what do you see in this picture? And you're giving someone a prompt to think of something in a way where they might not normally have that thought consciously, because their programming is so strong. So if they have like a victim programming, for example, and then you show them the Emperor, which is a card of power and sovereignty and wholeness, that's going to get them to kind of at least question or double take what their approach has been. So that's why I kind of like tarot as a therapeutic model. And that's how I read it. I also really love it as a self-care tool in general. There's just so many ways that you can incorporate tarot into your life without having to know how to read tarot, but just to pull a card, pull out the book, like see what it says, even as a creative writing tool or a gratitude journaling tool, just to pick up a card and be like, okay, like how does this relate to me in my situation right now? What does this remind me of? It's so like limitless, and there's 78 cards. So there's a lot in there, and they're very archetypal, they're very universal. It's just one of those things that it's kind of like chess, in that it was originally, a game, like a card game, but nobody knows like who exactly created it and how and why it's so complex and so symbolic. And so, there's a lot of wisdom in it, and it's kind of hard to even like unpack, but it's so applicable. It's just timeless. So tarot is very timeless. But yeah, there's 78 cards. There's a major arcana and a minor arcana. So the major has 22, and those are the ones that are highly esoteric, and they're big spiritual energies, and they're really amazing. And even if you just work with those 22 and put one on your altar for a certain season or intention, that's really powerful. And then the minor ones are also very profound and powerful, but they're a little more applicable to everyday situations. So they're a little more down to earth, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think tarot is going through like an interesting kind of renaissance right now, where some people will, almost the majority of people, are seeing it more in the therapeutic sense rather than the divination sense, which is wonderful, and it brings out a lot of potential in it. But that's kind of why I say there's nothing wrong with divination as well, because I think that that's history, and that's important work that a lot of people do. That obviously, when you're going to someone who's telling you your future, you have to take that with a grain of salt and understand that that is not something that is set in stone. But I think that that totally has value. So tarot, there are foundational meanings and understandings to every card, but like everything, it's so subjective, and depending on who you go to for a tarot reading, their interpretation is going to bring so much to what you actually receive. So there are like really political, activisty type of tarot readers. They're very like old school tarot readers, and so the reader brings so much to it. And that's why, as much as I advocate for like seeing a professional tarot reader when you want a professional reading like me, I also love the idea that everybody should just read tarot for themselves, because no one really knows you like you do. And it's a really beautiful journey of exploration that I think that, you know, everybody should have an opportunity to at least explore. Maybe some people will find that tarot's more, you know, appropriate for their like gifts and for their personality, and other people might not have as much patience for it, but it's definitely worth exploring because I just think it's amazing. It's totally changed my life, and there's always more layers to peel off of the tarot onion.
And what you were saying, I think the same thing about astrology too. You know, there are certain astrologers that are like very political, or, you know, will kind of look at the world at large and what the US is going through and governments, versus somebody else might read it a completely different way. And
Yeah.
for me, I think it's almost pulling your own card or using it more as therapeutic is just like a divination tool. Is for me, it's like maybe you're not reading your future, but it's what you
Mm-hmm.
might need to hear or see or like tune in to yourself to uncover, and
Right.
that peeling, just because it's not telling you that XYZ is going to happen, or, you know, predicting
Yes.
something. It's still allowing you to uncover that, like you said, that onion of who we are really. And I love how you said you incorporate that into journaling and writing, because you're by nature a writer and a journalist.
Mm-hmm.
And I love writing and journaling and connecting with myself, my higher self. And sometimes it feels like a beautiful channel flow state, you know, when you're really in tune and you're like,
Yeah.
did I just write that? Oh wow. Somebody else might
Yes. Like, yeah, it's really great for whatever your kind of like flavor is, you know, like if you're a dancer, holding the postures and the poses of certain tarot cards like a statue can really like bring you this huge like depth of a sense of what that card actually feels like to be embodied, and you know it just goes on. So like it's so cool how much there is to do with it. But I love what you said about divination, because I think that's true. Like it depends on what you even mean by divination, you know, like sometimes people come to me and say like, oh, can you tell me if like such and such will happen? And it's like, well, it's always divination even when you don't think it is, because it's giving you something that's going to, you know, open a portal to a different imaginative state, a different timeline, potentially different events, just by the way you understand it and interpret it and apply it. So it's not like it's one or the other. And that's kind of like so strange that like even I sometimes, like just before, like I almost kind of buy into the idea that there's this dual perspective on tarot, like it has to be divination or not. But I think you're right, like it always is, even when that's not necessarily like how someone else might see it at face value. It's just about kind of like understanding how, I guess, what we take from them, like everything.
Oh yeah, and there's plenty other divination cards. I one of my favorite deck is the moon card deck, which are beautiful illustrations, and they have kind of their own interpretation. So there are traditional tarot cards, and there's all type of different cards that you can use, and it's a beautiful way, like you said, a writing prompt. I use that in almost daily practices of just tuning into my energy. How do I feel? I'm thinking about a decision or a problem or whatever, just checking in and pull a card and, okay, how does this apply to me right now? Or, you know, how do I need to incorporate more of this into my life? Could you kind of talk, I know you've been a writer for a long time and still are. Could you share some of your own spiritual like writing practices? We talked about incorporating the tarot. I'm sure you have other beautiful practices that you do that help you kind of maintain your power.
Yeah. So free writing is the first thing that comes to mind, which is just when you make yourself write and don't stop. um, and I think that the reason that I'm drawn to that is, well, it's in situations where I really need to get something out, go through some kind of cathartic process. I don't, I feel to myself like we all do. And so when I do free writing, my purpose isn't necessarily to connect to, a higher realm or anything like that, even though that's amazing, but it's more just to like get it out and to purge. And I have like notebooks. I just pray, like somewhere at my mom's house in Australia, and I often just think, oh God, like if anything happened to me and someone found those, they would think that, I was like really hateful. But it's just that, we have our shadow selves. They need to be seen and heard. And there's a lot to get out. So free writing, it doesn't matter what you're writing. It doesn't even matter if you're not writing words. Like sometimes I'll just like scribble and it'll just be like, bleh, like it's not even making sense. And I still think that that's valuable. And aside from that, I also just really I like using it as a manifestation tool. So like setting intentions. And there's this beautiful visual example of this. The author Octavia Butler, you can Google like Octavia Butler diary, and she would say like, I'm going to be like on the New York Times like bestsellers list. I'm going to da da da. And then she'll write with like lots of exclamations. So be it, see to it. Like it's a real conjuring and it's a real petition to the universe. And I love writing in that way as well. And it's so interesting, like when I look back in my diaries in like high school, I would say things about what I wanted but it wasn't what I wanted. It was like, this is going to happen. I am committing to this. And it's powerful. It really works. Like there's something about, it's like sigils in witchcraft. Like there's something about putting pen to paper and actually like creating a text or a mark of some kind that once it exists in the physical world, it just ripples with power. And I think it's like so effective. Even if you don't like consider yourself a writer, just try doing that, like write lists, like just go nuts, and you'd be pretty amazed.
Yeah, I do a lot with manifestation with that is, I want this big goal, like that writer said, and I like to break it down as like, how do I want to feel? And when I have that goal, and then how can I incorporate that feeling into my life? And like for me, writing that way and just like kind of diluting that law of attraction down to like simple attainable stuff so I can feel that way now versus like, oh my gosh, that New York Times bestseller goal seems so far away, because we can easily get lost in like, I am here and it's way over here in this huge contrast.
And then it's just a bummer.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh, I'm not ready to do it. Yeah. But it's really the commitment, I think, for me. And you said like writing it down and like believing that it's true, and writing like, what do I need to do to get there? And just really reaffirming that to yourself. And knowing if you tune into that frequency and you maintain that and act as if that and be that frequency, that it will happen. It's almost like tuning into that power we were talking about earlier, is being true to yourself.
Yeah, it just sparks your imagination and your belief in a way that, for me, like not many other things feel like that. Like when you think that like all books, like every book that's like ever been made, the books that we're like obsessed with and we lose ourselves in, and fairy tales, and we're crying, and they're all just literal like abstract marks on a page, but they feel so much to us, because there's so much power there. And yeah, I think that if you can actually like put yourself in that storyline, like you say, where it really is a belief, it's like it's here with you now, and it's also an inevitable fact, then that's really nice. And sometimes when I do that, like if I've had a really nice time being like do 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 do, I'll also like I'll read it back to myself like a few times, and then when I go to bed, like right before, kind of in that point where like you're not quite asleep yet but you're starting to like doze off, I'll kind of like intentionally play the scene over in as much as I can, so that it feels like it's happening in real time, you know, if that makes sense, like something's actually happening really slowly, and then I'll just fall asleep pretty quickly. But I love like kind of putting myself into that dream state where I'm not just feeling it, but I'm, you know, seeing it happen. And then in the morning it feels so good because it's like, oh, it's kind of already happened.
Oh, for sure. That's like one of the big proponents of my meditation practice, and that visualization, and like getting yourself connected to whatever you want to call it. Like I call it like the field, you know, the energy that connects us all, and playing that mind movie, that visualization in my head that I just dreamt up. And it's like that's what I was talking about earlier, is like tuning into that frequency is like, oh, okay, I'm connected. All possibilities exist. I'm going to hone in on this one, and let's bring that into my dreams, and let's bring that into my body. And then eventually the waking world is, I think, just like the most beautiful recipe for magic to happen. I truly believe in like power meditation and visualization. I know you are also a meditator. Could you kind of run us down how you use meditation in your day-to-day practice?
So I don't have one kind of school of thought or one training, you know, in meditation. I do take a lot from mindfulness because it isn't naturally embodied. I'm not like grounded and completely in touch with what's going on for me from the neck down. I have to do a lot of work to make that happen. So body scans, you know, are like they're so easy, and it's just like a really nice way to actually remind myself that I have a body, and I need that like daily. So I'll kind of just, you know, do that, and then I'll also just kind of like stand up and center myself. I've been training with like a somatic coach, and learning about centering, and so it's kind of, you know, very very similar to how people hold themselves in Tai Chi that we were talking about, but to have like a really strong center of gravity, to be lengthened and, you know, aware of like yourself in space that way, and aware of your width in space, aware of like how you're holding yourself forward or backward, and how to find like a calm kind of, you know, center, so that you can actually feel like, here I am, you know. And so it's kind of as simple as that, you know. I don't really do anything special. I also kind of will like meditate in the bath in like a more laissez-faire way. I have a bath every single day because I'm so fortunate to have, when I'm in there, I tend to just, you know, get into a nice place of presence and don't really think too much about, you know, scanning my body or repeating a mantra or anything like that. I just try and like let myself like float. So that's almost the reverse. I try and like not think about my body, and I just kind of like empty my mind, which of course never works, but I like to try because I'm so chattery upstairs all day long. Qigongs as needed. But that'll be like a, you know, 10, 15. Yeah. So here and there, like I'll incorporate that, and I'll incorporate a bit of like shielding or grounding stuff as like more spiritual hygiene. So like quick meditations as I kind of need them. But that's the extent of it. I certainly don't have like a 2-hour daily morning meditation practice or anything like that, like some people I know. I have ADHD, and I don't know if I could like sit still for 2 hours if I tried. I've never actually tried. Maybe an hour would be like my limit, but if I was laying down, probably longer.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I sometimes, depends on the season. I was a avid meditator, like hour plus every day. Not as much
Mm.
anymore. It just, for me, it's what I needed at that time. And I
Mm-hmm.
am and like, oh, do I
Yeah.
feel like doing that today? If so, I'm gonna do it. If not,
Yes.
that's okay. That's okay.
Absolutely. That's it. Like listening to your body and your energy and like what feels good. And the last thing you want is like for meditation to feel like another chore, you know.
Yeah, it defeats the purpose. Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I think at that, I would love to wrap everything up. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about today?
No, I think that's it. Thank you so much for having me on. I love being on podcasts and I love having my own podcast again because it's been quite a while. It's been almost like a year since I would do, but I'm really excited about Beyond Belief. So thanks for letting me talk about it.
Of course, of course. And we are so happy to have you on. And all of the listeners know this is a regular thing we do. We're so grateful for you and your time and your presence and your wealth of wisdom sharing with us today. So I always like to challenge the listeners. How may we be of service as a gift of gratitude in return for you today?
Thank you so much. I love that question. I just think it's so beautiful. A lot of what we've talked about is about how to kind of DIY your approach to spirituality. And for me, that really means like listen to yourself, what feels good for you. Don't do anything that doesn't feel good for you. You know, if you want to go outside and just like put your bare feet on the grass and dance to Britney Spears for an hour or two, just do that. That would be of great service to me. You know, like embrace your inner child, embrace creative healing, let it look however it looks for you. And then I think that that would make me really happy and hopefully it would be of some help to you as well.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm going to turn on some other 90s band after this and get my groove on. That's
Woo!
my spiritual practice for today. Thank you again so much,
Same.
Jerico, for coming on. Have a happy dance party after this.
Thank you. You too. Enjoy.